So that is all of our housekeeping issues. With that, I want to introduce our presenter this evening. Our presenter is Erik Wright. If you are on the West Coast, you almost certainly know Erik. Very active on the West Coast. He is the director of the United States Polo Association West Coast Regional Training Centers in San Francisco, LA, and also he's in the desert as well during the winter. He is the founder of Right Way Polo, has one of the certainly arguably the most successful training and coaching programs here in the United States, and we are very pleased and honored to have Erik here to present the 5 secrets to winning low goal polo. So with that, I am going to take just a second and give the controls over to Erik, which will take us just a moment. Erik, it's all yours.
Okay. Thank you, Kim, and welcome everybody. Thanks for attending. I'm just as honored to be presenting, and I'm quite honored to have as many people on as we do. I wanted to talk about the 5 secrets of winning low goal polo. I'm going to try and add a couple extra there for us all. Hold on one second while I do a little housekeeping here. Okay.
Hit your
we're at Polo Pyramid?
Yeah, your slideshow there, Erik.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So what I wanted to first talk about was...
Hang on, Erik. We're not seeing your slideshow, we're just seeing your PowerPoint.
Okay. How do I get to that, Kim?
Go up there where it says slideshow. Nope, up at the top, slideshow. There you go. There you go, from the beginning. It's good.
Okay.
There.
Okay. Okay. So I first wanted to talk about the different types of polo and the different types of low goal polo, because there actually are a few, and this may seem a little redundant in some places, but I think you'll see the picture at the end. What I'm always trying to create, whatever venue I'm in, is a pyramid for people to climb and climb whatever level they want. You have to give people stepping stones, new players in particular, stepping stones to get into polo. The model to get into polo is pretty tough. I think the old model was kind of, maybe you knew a friend and you had that he would float you a couple of polo ponies for a little bit, and then you pretty much had to buy a horse before you even knew whether you liked polo. A friend of mine said it really well one time. He said, if you learn how to ski, you don't have to buy a ski lodge to figure out whether you like skiing. You can rent your poles and rent your skis, and you can get it on the lift, and you can try it out, and then you start buying the expensive gear. So, like I said, in any market I'm working in, I'm trying to build a pyramid that we're trying to create as much access for as many people as possible. Some people are going to climb all the way to the top of the polo pyramid. Some people are gonna drop at any sort of level in between, and I'm not really trying to determine that. I let people determine that on their own, but be it their time, money, effort. These are the things that stop people from going, to 20 or 26 goal polo. But most of the players in the United States that play are 2 goals and below, and I think that's where we should be concentrating our efforts, and certainly that's where the majority of players are that play. So we should embrace that. So in defining these, I'm going to kind of go through a couple of things. We start a lot of people in polo lessons, polo schools. There's kind of another area of polo I want to talk about, which I think is the majority of, say, summer polo. It's changing a little bit now, but we have a lot of polo out there, summer polo maybe, that it's all amateurs, and there's nothing wrong with that. But that's a level of polo here to be defined, which is that we have 4 amateurs. There's no pros involved in the situation, and it's a summer club or maybe somewhere else. and this I think there's a large majority of polo in the summer. I like to see personally, and full disclosure here, I'm a 2-goal pro, and I make my part of my living this way. But I actually believe that if you add a pro, and it has to be the right kind of pro, and someone that is more invested in building the club and the membership and is playing for the fun and enjoyment of other players and teaching those players. So I don't always like to see for amateur polo unless they're obviously they're better players, but what we're trying to avoid is bad polo, because bad polo is not fun polo, and this leads to people this leads to people getting frustrated. A lot of times you'll see nobody knows what the rules are, nobody knows who fouled and who didn't, and now it's a he said she said thing. But when you have kind of a neutral, I like to have a club sponsored pro, so that sponsor or that pro is representing the entire membership. I like to see that. The caveat here is that you have to take a lot of care to find and hire the type of pro and club manager and instructor that plays for the betterment and enjoyment of players and members, as opposed to just playing for myself, and those guys are hard to find. So you kind of go from that to the situation that I work in the most, which is club polo with one pro on a side. I think this is the best balance between cost and enjoyment. It's still tough to afford sometimes, especially if you're doing it at a club level. But I like to see that. I like to have when I do this in my 1-goal polo in the desert, or most of my coaching leagues, or the things I do in the various clubs that I'm in. I like to put a coach on each side and have 3 amateurs with the coach, and each coach on each side kind of provides instruction. I think that this is a really good model for a lot of polo, in particular introductory polo, because you're providing guidance, or in theory you're providing guidance, and you're allowing people to get better at their own speed. And some people move through that procession quickly, and they move on to faster and faster polo, and some people take more time, and you should allow for that. I think that this can also be typified in pro pool situations. We see that, and I'd like to see that more and more. I think that that's a win for both amateurs and pros, because pros, they're all on equal footing. They understand what their job is, and for amateurs, the cost can be split 3 ways, and you're getting teams. We move from up this ladder, into, say, low goal tournament polo, 4 to 8 goal polo, and on higher. This is when maybe people are starting to hire pros on their own. And the West Coast is typified by 4 to 6 goal leagues. Let's say in the desert is what I associate this most with, but from the West Coast. And this is the next logical step for people that want to improve their skills and go to the next level. It's at some point you have to stop training and put it to use, and this is a good place to do that. But it's kind of an acquired taste. I mean, for me, I don't like to see people pushed into this level of polo too soon. A lot of people get pushed into this in their first year. For me, I prefer people take a couple, even 2 or 3 years to decide whether that's where they want to move into. I feel like you're much better off waiting and having these people really be ready to play that polo and enjoy it. Because if they're pushed into it by a pro, by compatriots, by the club, maybe you're really pushing them out, because they spend a lot of money and they don't have fun. And it's going to be a lot of money either way, but you want people to have fun and actually be able to enjoy it. If they're just running around following everybody around, that's not going to be fun. So I prefer to take time with these players and let them come on at their own speed. And then, you know, kind of on up from that, you know, we're into medium and high goal polo. Those are you know, more or less the same from that point of view. That, you know, now we're out of low goal polo, but when you take these as a whole, they form a pyramid or a ladder that players can climb, and you let and as an association, I think that the more we build this kind of ladder, the more places we can build this ladder, and give people different places to land on the pyramid. It just adds to the number of people that can play and enjoy the sport. I'm often asked where you know, where are all the high goal sponsors? Where are those guys gone? You know, and I usually respond that that line of thinking is kind of starting from the wrong end of the production line. People don't just drop out of the sky here. They have to be brought on by thoughtful professionals with a long-term vision. And not every person that you bring into polo, either as a club or a professional, is going to go play 26 goal. Most of them aren't. 90% of the players that play in the United States are 2 goals and below. So that's where most of the players are, and we should work to help those people. And that's also where you find the high goal sponsors, because the high goal sponsors, almost all of them started out as logo sponsors. So you know, if you're looking to produce high level polos, that's where they are. And anyway, I just like to build this kind of ladder or a pyramid as we're going along. So anyway, let's go on to the 5 secrets of winning logo polo. Let's see, we got medium. Sorry. By the way, there are different strategies for each. You're going to approach this differently, and I can kind of answer that in Q&A. I've got a couple of the basic strategies I use in logo polo, and I'm certainly happy to take questions at the end on those. Okay, 5 secrets to winning logo polo. My primary mentor in polo is Corky Linfoot. One of the best things he ever said to me, among many great statements, was, "Don't play low goal polo, play high goal polo slowly." And what he meant by that is how, you know, how do you play a high goal slowly? It's an attitude. A lot of it comes down to preparation. I'm probably the least talented 2-goal player, you know, in terms of, I'm not a guy that takes the ball out of the air and hits it out. You know, what I try and do is be very prepared, very well mounted, and put the team together that has a chance of winning. So you have to prepare your team and your team members, and you have to have a strategy and a team philosophy before you step on the field. No, it's not always possible if you're in, you know, a tournament on the weekend, but to the degree that it is, you should attempt to do that. And even if you only have a day or two, you know, a lot of times you got a local tournament, you only got a few days to prepare, you don't know, you know, you should circle back with the players that you're going to play with and try and format some kind of philosophy, some kind of idea of what you're going to do. It makes a big difference in your success.
Erik.
So put a good team together. Yeah.
Before you go on, this is Kim. So just a question on that. One of the things that seems to happen in low goal polo is that we sort of just restructure and start playing a different kind of game when we're in low goal as compared to medium or what we see played in the higher goal. So can you talk a little bit about, you know, what is high goal played slowly? What does that look like, and how does that differ from what I might be playing, you know, every day out on the field, or what our listeners might be seeing or experiencing on the field? How do they know if they're playing high goal slowly or they're playing low goal?
Well, I think it takes direction. In other words, if you go out with a philosophy and then you're trying to execute your strategy or your philosophy, it all starts with, if you don't have a strategy or philosophy, you're not going to end with one, right? So you don't know whether you're executing that or not. For me, And of course, polo's changing in a lot of different ways. But for me, and I'll get into this a little bit down the road here, but for me, if you can play kind of classic polo, when I say play high goal, I don't personally mean dribble the ball 15 times out of the air and score. I actually mean to simplify it and to play a team game with 4 players and so back shots and really to the degree you can, training, setting up on set plays. You're setting up your knock-ins, you're setting up your throw-ins. You're prepared. So I guess that's the most basic answer, and I'll answer it kind of. Each of these is a little bit of an answer to that question, but
okay.
I think the first, that fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you want to put a good team together, and if you want to play polo and have a fun, have a laugh, put your best friends on the team, but that isn't always what it's going to lead to a successful team or a win. So when you're putting teams together, I put teams together based. Probably first thing I think of is position. There's not much point in putting 4 backs on a team or 4 forwards on a team. You need a number 1 and you need a back, and you kind of start there in most teams, especially if you've got a pro on there that's sort of a designated team captain. But you should try and put position players together. Probably the next thing I'm going to judge people or when I'm putting teams together is livestock. If you can have the best player in the world, but if he's not mounted, he's not gonna be able to make, he or she is not going to be able to make the plays you expect him to make. And it's also you can have a brilliant player, or you can have a series of brilliant players. That's almost a cliche. You look at a team on paper and you think, wow, that's going to kill everybody because they're really talented players, but then they don't win. It's because you have 4 players working independently, and so I pick players for their position. I pick players for their livestock, and then I pick players on whether they can play together cohesively. And I'll take a lesser player that in terms of talent, but that I think will play better with the team. That's critical. If you don't have a team that will play together, you might as well not start. And it's kind of a gift when you get all those things together, but really the players have to complement each other. I definitely take cohesion over individual brilliance. Again, there's not much point in having 4 number 1s, but they're all running to goal, but nobody's playing back. So again, every team needs a number 1 and needs a back. You need a number 1 because you need somebody that's going to be disciplined, and those players, number 1 and number 4 are almost the same position, just reverse images. They require almost the same amount of discipline. If nothing's worse than a back that's constantly running forward and scoring goals. I mean, I'm not saying you can't take the odd shot here and there if it's fat, but I'll take a disciplined back over a talented back every day of the week. And the same applies for a 1. If the 1s are coming back to help on defense and they're coming back too far, even if the play gets turned, there's no one to hit you. So you have to have the 2 ends of the field. Make sense? Be better mounted. This is kind of a duh, but it's easier said than done. I talked to a high goal sponsor one time, or sort of early in my career, and I said, "Oh, how are the horses?" He said, "I finally," and this is a guy that money was no object, and he was buying all the high goal, and he can buy whatever he needs to buy. And I said, how how the horses? And he said, I finally got 6 horses that I really enjoy. And I thought, and that kind of hit me hard because if a guy like that, first of all, he owned about 18, and second of all, um, um, you know, if it took him that long to kind of come up with that number of horses and that he really enjoyed it, I thought to myself, boy, I'm never going to get there. But it's something you just have to constantly look for, and constantly work to be better mounted. And again, when I'm looking for players, I look for players that that are well mounted themselves. We say horses are 90% of the game, um, um, and so if we're not taking that into account when we're putting teams together, we're just making a clear mistake. Um, I think in particular in local, you need to be able to stop a lot more than you need to be able to run. Um, and I prefer a horse. I prefer a horse that I can stop and turn over one that will run every time, because if you're getting run off with out there, then you can't make predictable plays. Number 3, use all of your players. For me, all players, and this is most critical to me in local. Polo is played by 4 players on a side, so you got to use all your players. Every player, even the newest beginner, has something can contribute, and the trick is to define what skills each team member has and can bring to the table, and combine them into your cohesive team strategy. A lot of times you'll see in, let's just call it a 4-goal, you have 2 of the pros and they're playing back to, just basically playing, to each other. I think this is crap. You got to use all 4 players, and in particular in local, if you're in 4 to 6 goal polo, all the pros are going to be 2 and 3 goals, and within some variation, the pros are going to take each other out in that system. And really in local, the difference is the amateurs. If you have an amateur that is a player and is actually really contributing and is getting used, versus someone who's just riding around out there, for me that's the difference in winning in that level of polo. So so I'm always trying to create amateur players that are going to produce as much as possible. We, as a team, we expect a lot from them, and sometimes more than we should expect from them. But I think that's what moves people kind of up that polo pyramid is trying to get to the next level and getting pushed, getting challenged to the next level. I like to make this is all about team play, and I like to make it about execution and team play, and not about individual brilliance or ball control. Another great thing Cork has said to me many times is he coaches a lot of my local teams, high goal teams, and he's never trying to make any one of us play a goal or 2 better than we are on that day. But if we can make each player go up by half a goal, we've got a 2-goal spread now. If we can play a half a goal, if each one of the 4 players can play a half a goal over our handicap, we've raised the team handicap or the team playing handicap 2 goals. So and it just gets easier. It starts. I'm sure everyone's played with players that they just whatever, you're in sync and you read each other well. When you play with those kind of players, the polo gets easier and easier and easier. In other words, you're not putting too much pressure on any one individual player. If you ask a guy to make a 100-yard shot every time he shoots a goal, or you ask him to make a double play on defense, over 4 or 6 chukkers, maybe he's going to make that play a couple of times, but over the bulk of the game, the more you push any individual player, sooner or later they're going to make an error. And if you play as a team, you take the pressure off of the individuals and balance it across the team. makes a big difference. And you see that a lot. You know, a lot of times we call that momentum or whatever, but I think a lot of that goes back to when we're playing together as a team, it gets easier. And you also see the reverse when we're focusing on one player making all the plays, and it gets harder and harder on that player, and the other players are doing less and less. That's again why I like to use all of my players, because we spread out the load and we're all working together.
Erik, can I interrupt for a second? Would it help if
Again, everybody. Sure.
if I advanced if I took care of your slides for you?
Sure.
All right. So don't freak out when I take control back.
Okay.
Keep going.
Okay. Oops. I'm out. Okay, wait a second.
Whoops. I made the wrong person. Keep going.
Okay. Okay. Number 4, don't exceed 75% commitment on your horses. There is rarely a need to go over 75% commitment when you're playing logo polo. Even you know, if we're calling it the upper reaches of logo for even to 8-hole polo. You know, I consider that greater than 75% commitment. That's you're running in the 6th chucker to stop an overtime goal, you know, or you're running to stop to go into overtime or something. That's when you exceed 75% commitment on your horses. Good players run to where the ball is going, and then they slow down, so that when they arrive, they're under control. When they're under control of their horses. Particularly in logo, you're going to see the slowest moving players on the field will be the professionals in general. They're going to a spot and then slowing down and being under control. A lot of that goes back to anticipation, and if you're a new player, that it takes a while to develop that. But it still doesn't mean that you want to exceed your 75% commitment on your horses. We get this you know, the kind of downward spiral, the downward speed spiral, and it is the speed spiral is downwards, not upwards. You know, we see this most times when a player is late to a play. They run at 100% commitment level to a player that's at 60% commitment level. They get hooked out. Now they go, you know, by 4 or 5 strides. The play gets turned, and you know, now they're rushing to get back to the next play. Now they're even more late, so they're going even harder. The horse is getting more and more tired, therefore, you know, less and less able to stop, and that's just a downward speed spiral. If you find yourself in that situation, slow down, pick an opposing player, mark that player until you kind of get your bearings again. Again, I see at the top here a great statement by Corky Linfoot. Don't confuse activity with achievement. If I'd much rather see a player make 4 solid plays a chucker than run around trying to save the world. We often talk about again, this goes back to team play, but we talk about not helping each other. In other words, we each have our own area of responsibility. If I'm the number 1, I have an area of responsibility. If I'm the 2, I have an area of responsibility. If I'm the 3, I have an area of responsibility. If I'm the 4, I have the area of responsibility. And the more that the 3 spends in if I'm playing 4 and I've got the 3 in my area of responsibility, we're running over each other. We're not helping each other. So you have to be able to accept that commitment and fulfill it or not. But when you come and help, in general, that's not a help that hurts the team, not helping. Play classic polo. Keep it simple, stupid is my motto, because I'm not that smart. It's simple and it's the least confusing. You play classic polo. It involves the most players. back the ball 95% of the time you have the opportunity to do so. The minute a higher goal player, or any player really, but the minute a higher goal player turns the ball, now it's starting to confusing. What's he going to do? And it's as confusing to his teammates a lot of the time as it is to his opponents. So in particular, when you're starting maybe coaching league or one goal or whatever, if you back that tail shot every time, you're conditioning people to turn up to new players to turn up and play that line. And even a lot of times that you back that ball and it comes right back at you. But if you keep backing it, keep backing it, and keep backing it, people will start to read the play. Excuse me, and now you've got people playing polo versus just running around. I like to take full swings of the ball. I don't like my players, really any of my players, but certainly not my beginners, to dribble. Maybe a half stroke, but even that I'm not crazy about. I like people to take full swings of the ball, move the polo ball, and I don't want to confuse a full swing with a hard swing. A full swing is still soft. You're just kind of letting the mallet do most of the work. And in particular, inside the 60, shoot. There's windows that open and there's windows that close, and when you see an opening inside the 60, for me, shoot a goal. These are kind of basics of just really simple polo. We see a lot of people trying to dribble the ball to goal, and that's nice, but for me, when if you have 60 yards to cover, and you take 15 shots to cover 60 yards, that's 15 opportunities to miss. When I'm inside the 60 and I see a window, I shoot it, because maybe that window is going to close. And of course, the other thing that happens when we dribble is that in general, you're going to slow down, and that's going to allow the defense to collapse on you, and usually get hooked, or you're trying to shoot through horses' legs and people. And so for me, I just say, when you're inside the 60, shoot it. So again, back the ball 95% of the time, shoot on goal. Okay, 2 more winning secrets. Plan your play and play your plan. You got to have a plan, and it's shocking how hard it is to get 4 people thinking the same way. I played a lot of polo in a lot of different places, and it's very difficult to put teams together that will play together. But you should always work for that. You should have at least two. We have very few set plays in polo. We have penalties, we have knock-ins, we have throw-ins, and those are their only set plays. Everything else is free form. So you should have at least 2 strategies for knock-ins, for throw-ins, and for penalties. And our role playing is if plan A doesn't work, if you've missed 2 throw-ins in a row, switch to plan B. I like to have three plays for penalties, knock-ins, and throw-ins, so that you can switch quickly. And you've got to be prepared to shift your strategy at halftime, because if you're playing another team, yeah, that's a good team, and a thinking team, they're going to adapt to you, and what worked in the first half may not work in the second half. So you definitely want to have as many 3 set plays, and then be able to adapt to something else. Maybe read what the opponents are doing and change it at halftime. That should be part of your discussion at halftime. So here are 2 of the kind of plays I use with it's called a 4-minute rotating zone. This is what I advise people to do when there's 4 amateurs on the team. we'll go over that, and we'll also go. Well, I guess we're going over that first. So, what I like people to do, usually I start a lot of people in the arena, so they're used to kind of the rotation scheme of arena polo, which is that you know, a player. Whoops, where did we go backwards again? Oh. Okay, so I'm usually taking players from the outdoor field, or the outdoor, sorry, the arena to the outdoor field, but they're then used to this rotation strategy, which is in the arena. If you can just picture this in the arena, that once they've missed, they're going to rotate and come back here, and when this player misses, they're gonna come.
Hang on,
Kim, are
Eric.
we
I
on
just
here?
made you the presenter so that you can
Okay,
draw. There you go.
okay, okay. Were you seeing what
There.
I was saying?
Nope.
We're
Explain
on.
it again.
Okay, sorry. Okay. So what I was saying is that I take a lot of players from the arena. That's where I start players, and then they go from the arena to the outdoor. When we do that, the arena players are used to, whoops, the screen here. They're used to this rotation strategy that you employ in the arena, basic arena strategy, which is the minute that this player misses, he's going to rotate back behind as quickly as possible. And he's going to carry the ball for as long as possible. And when he misses, he's going to come back behind. Basically, when I switch people to the outdoor field, and there's not a pro on the side to kind of help things out and help things moving along and provide guidance. Again, not the ideal situation for me, but if this is a situation, then what I do is I have this for the outdoor. I have a four-man rotating zone. Okay, so what you're trying to do is follow each other down the field for as long as possible, because none of these you can't really employ the classic, say, diamond formation that we'd see in higher level polo, where you know, we've got where we're making passes to each other, because none of these individual players, when they're starting out, can hit far enough or accurately enough to make passes and use angles. So you're going to go straight up and down the field as much as you can, and when this player misses, they rotate back behind, and we just keep going like a train. And sometimes they call this a train, and they'll just keep rotating back behind each other. The critical part is to rotate as quickly as possible, or sometimes I have players just move over to the side here a little bit and wait for the whole line of players to go by, and then drop in back behind. Oops. And then the other one, when you add, you see this a lot in like my coaching chuckers, or in, say, 1 to 2 goal polo. I call it, there's a three-man rotating zone. So you'll have, say, a better player, professional team captain up here. You'll have 3 amateurs here, and they'll rotate when they miss. They're gonna go forward with the ball. They're gonna get passes, and when they go as far as they can go, and then when they miss, they rotate. But they rotate between the third player and the fourth player. You have the pro back here, or the best player play a zone back. So they're back here controlling the back end, controlling the defense, and you want this person to be able to be a long ball hitter if you can. And you keep things moving forward. And when they miss, they just rotate back and keep coming on behind. And then when you when players have progressed past this level, I mean, this is a pretty early stage, but when they have progressed past this 3-man rotating zone, that's when I start asking one player at a time, particularly in the coaching situations, to start playing back behind the pro, and then we start playing more traditional type of polo, where we've got a back, we've got a one, and we're passing that way.
Okay, very good. So what we're going to do now is Erik's going to take your questions. So any specific questions that you have for Erik, just type them in the box and I will pass them on. While we're letting everybody type some of their questions, though, I have some questions for you, Erik.
Okay.
So talking about logo polo, I mean, you've talked a lot about kind of coaching leagues and maybe only one pro. But let's talk a little bit more about, say, 4 to 8 goal tournament polo, because that's still logo polo. So
Right.
how, the secret to winning at that level, how does that differ from what you've outlined here?
It doesn't really. I mean, again, we're trying to create a we're trying to create the same basic things. You got to start with a team. You got to start with horses and capabilities. I think the biggest step people make is that they don't, or the biggest step that teams skip is they skip that whole process. They're we're throwing four players out there and attempting, thinking that something good's going to happen. For me, it doesn't happen by accident. It happens with a lot of preparation. So, if you're going to play 8 goal polo, again, you got to do the same thing. You've got to put a good team together, and you're going to have control over that varies. Maybe the club's putting your teams together in a pro pool. Maybe money stops from getting the exact pros you want. Maybe there could be anything, but so maybe you don't get the exact team that you want. But whatever team you come up with, you gotta get them together on the same kind of page, and play together, and then have your strategy, map out your philosophy. Are we gonna run and hit? Are we gonna try and slow the game down? It's gonna depend on the teams that you're playing against as well. I mean, you have to take that into account. You have to take into account that maybe you're playing a team that likes to run and hit. So it's at least a thought that you maybe want to run a different strategy where you're trying to slow the game down a bit. That's at least a strategy. Polo to me is a martial art, and for every move there's a counter move, and you always want to have you always want to be aware of what the other team and the other players like to do, and then you're trying as much as possible to make them do the opposite of that. If the team likes to run, try and slow them down. If they like to slow down, try and make them run. In particular in regards to logo polo, you're trying to put pressure on or put any opponents out of their comfort zone. You want to make them do things they're not comfortable doing as much to the degree that you can.
Mm-hmm. Jim has a question. He says, can you describe some simple plays that work well for teams being low goal with limited amount of strategy, knowledge, and discipline?
Well, I think I mean, if you're eliminating discipline, you're eliminating a lot of things. I have a couple players that I play with. I have one or two I'm thinking of right now that a lot of people discount because maybe they're not as they're not hitting the ball 100 yards. But if I have a disciplined back, that changes the entire game strategy for me, and that's hard to find. I mean, that's especially in logo. You got people that want to chase the ball, and and if you got somebody that will actually stay back in the back or actually stay at one, that's a big thing. But so discipline's probably the most important of those things, and if you're throwing that out, that's going to be hard to do anything. But if I'd say the most basic thing is that you have to define who is gonna play one and who is gonna play back, and then when they and then you can define who the 2 or 3, and but you have to define what their responsibility is. Is the one going to be marking the opposing back? Sorry, I'm not a very good artist. Is he going to be free floating? A lot of times I will ask my number 1 in particular if they're brand new, and so they're not going to be able to do a whole bunch of defense. I ask them to go deeper. Let me erase something here. A lot of times I'll ask them to go deeper than the opposing back. Maybe I'll do it with so that I have a chance maybe to lob a ball over them. It also pulls that 4. It kind of puts them between players, and as opposed to if this 4 is actually marking my number 1, say that'll be my number 1. I like to put them a little deeper than that sometimes to draw that 4 back, or to put them between my 1 and 2, so that you're asking that 4 to make a choice between players, or if he's floating between players, that's the best of all worlds because he's not marking anybody. I'm sure I answered your question now well there, but if there's a specific set play like a knock-in or a throw-in that you have, you can ask that question, and it might be a little easier.
Okay. Arthur wants to know any tips for newbies absorbing all the rules.
It's a lot. I think Poloskilz is a great resource. Since it opened, I've had a bunch of my players on there and talking about it. As much as anything, even if you don't absorb the entire message of what's happening in particular video, for me, it's inspired a lot of conversation, and I like nothing better than sitting down with new players after the game and diagramming plays with a whiteboard and grease pen and just it's just a repetitive thing. You can watch the video, especially like the Steve Lane has some great explanations on the webinars on his deal. It's repetition, and don't be afraid to ask. If you've got a pro nearby, ask them. Most guys are happy to stop and explain it to you. I think polo is got to be the most difficult sport that there is. When I grew up in high school, I was a very serious swimmer. I was 4 hours a day in the pool, and I did that every day. And in polos, I think most of us that had some sort of high school athletic experience, you practiced every day or at least 3 or 4 days a week. And most of the time in polo, we're trying to come out on a Friday or a Sunday and try and get better in 2 days. For me, for the newbies, spend as much time riding and talking with somebody that you respect their opinion, review Poloskilz or any videos you can find, and ask questions. Again, in high school we were out there playing every day trying to get better. Polo, which is 10 times tougher than any sport there is, we're trying to do a day a week or 2 days a week. It's not a practical reality. And I would say that if you're a newbie, ride as much as you can, and as relates to the rules, as much video, as much grease board time, and as much grab somebody and ask them when you have a question. I like to grab my players between checkers and say, okay, you went to this play. and we need to change it. Polo is about time, and it takes a lot of time to become a good player, and it takes a lot of time to learn all the rules. But I think the journey is really a fun thing. I tell players, if instant gratification is your thing, polo is probably not your sport. But it's the greatest road to be on, right? I mean, you learn something new, and that opens 5 doors, and you open one of those doors, and that opens 5 more doors, and it's such a deep sport in terms of learning new things. I feel like high goal players even are learning something new every day, and I don't know that there's too many sports you can say that about.
Okay, we've got some more questions, but I just can't help myself. I've got to chime in on Arthur's question.
Mm-hmm.
So because this is something that I face myself, Arthur. So here's my ideas for it. Number one, you asked about rules specifically and absorbing all the rules because there's so many. It's amazing how many people have never actually read them, or they've only read them once. And the more you play, your understanding of the rules with each reading will get better and change. So one of the things I try to read the rules at least once a season, and generally more often than that. So that would be number one. Get out the little white book and read it. Number two is take opportunities to umpire and go to umpire clinics, even if you don't ever intend to be a certified umpire. I am a big believer that the more umpiring you do, the better you become as a player. Number three is for those of us who play a lot of low goal, you'll notice that high goal is a lot easier to see the fouls than low goal. Low goal is just a big cluster bumble half the time, right? So on Poloskilz, here's a big plug for Poloskilz, right? We have some footage of the U.S. Open, and we have the Townsend Cup that was played out at Empire last year. We have a high goal footage. So my other recommendation would be to watch that high goal or any high goal near you. If you can, watch it with a knowledgeable player or umpire and ask them, what was that foul? Why was that a foul? And then finally, I just got a note today from someone who was watching last year's U.S. Open, and he sent me on Poloskilz, and he sent me a note, and he said, love the slow-mo button. That's the ability to go backward and forward in slow motion. And on the videos, I was able to understand why the fouls were fouls. And because those things happen so fast without the ability to go forward and backward, it's really, really hard to figure it out. So those would be my answers to for newbies
But,
about how you would try to absorb the rules.
and that's a great suggestion. The other thing I would suggest is, take the rules. It's a lot, so take the rule book, and that's a great place to have a grease board or a pad and paper, and diagram out the examples so that you have an understanding. And if you're confused on sometimes it's hard even to diagram it out. But diagram it out as much as you can. If you're confused, then ask somebody that you think knows, and diagram it out section by section. It's the only way really to start it, at least at the philosophical level, and then seeing it as a whole nother thing. As much as you can, be out there and umpire. You don't even necessarily need to to blow whistles.
Yeah.
It just being out there, and I think you realize how hard it is to be an umpire. So I think it drops the complaint department down at least a little bit, and two, it just gets you in the idea of starting to see the line, and maybe you didn't see the line where you thought it was, and the other umpire can help you with that, should be able to help you with that, and it starts making your mind quicker. It makes you a much better player. The other thing you can do, even if you have no intention of being an umpire ever, is to take the rules test, because that is an education in of itself. I mean, I learn something every time I take that test. I'm like, where you relearn it. again, the USPA has a ton of resources. They'll send Steve Lane or other professional umpires out to your club, and USPA is putting these resources out there, so you should avail yourself of them. It's a great way to figure it out. Again, even if you don't ever mean to be an umpire, it makes you a much better player.
Okay, next question is from Rexy. It says, should the back always hang back and wait for the play to move towards him?
Well, Polo, a game like any other, you can play a zone, or you can play, which means that oops, what happened here? Sorry, guys. That the 4 is taking responsibility for this zone, and the 3 is taking responsibility for this zone, and the 2 is taking care, or you can play man on man, where you're committing to an individual player. Where's my
pointer options?
Pointer option. There we go. Okay. Or you can go man on man. But let's assume here that you're playing a zone back. So you're not staying back 400 yards. You're following into the play, and you're staying within a reasonable difference. But you might be giving yourself, depending on how quick you are and as a player and how long it takes to turn around. If the opposing players are you got a 1, you got a back, and sorry, you got a 2 and a 3. Sorry, guys. The 4 should be marking for me. If you're playing, you should be marking either the first player through or the number 1, and you should make that determination before you step on the field with your team. You should say, if I'm going to play, the opposing number 1, that's essentially a man-on-man game. So the 1. Sorry, if you're at the back position and you're playing man-on-man, then you're going to be with the opposing 1, right? Alternatively, you could say, I'm going to take whatever the first person, if the players are in a scrum, you got the 1 in the back, and you got these players back here, and somebody breaks out. What you're saying in particular when you're playing zone back, you're going to say, I've got as the back, I've got the first player out, no matter who it is, and that's a team strategy. I like players to play a zone back. I think it's simple to play. And you're just picking back. But the short answer to your question is, I love a back that stays back. If you have a 4 that's constantly running through, occasionally a 4 is going to score some goals, but it's mostly because he's followed everybody through, and everybody's kind of off the field, and he's been left alone by somebody's made an error, and he's been left alone, and he makes a fast shot. When you have your 4 scoring 10 goals a game, there's a problem. It means he's a good forward and not a very good back. Because as a back, you're trying to stop the forward momentum of the other players. So when the play gets turned, your responsibility as the 4 is to make sure that you at least slow the forward momentum down, if not stop it and turn the play completely.
Okay. This is a related question from Sandy. It says, good suggestions for offense on the demo board with rotation. How about defense in the same scenario?
That's a good question. So it depends there on it depends there on the caliber of player, that how much time people have been playing. In particular, just because I play so much 3-man rotating zone, I'm playing
usually I'm playing back, and I ask my players not to pass me on defense. So, in other words, I don't want them to come in this zone here. I don't want them in there where they've come past me, between me and the goal, because again, if say my one, and this happens, they run past here, right? And now, okay, maybe they make a hook and they make a defensive play up there, but now I don't have anyone to hit the ball to, and go back the other way. So in this scenario, a lot of the times I'm playing the back and I'm providing the bulk of the defense in that particular role, but that doesn't mean that these players shouldn't be picking up a player when we turn from offense to defense. The minute we turn from offense to defense, these players should be finding and opposing players to pick up. I just don't want them to pass me on defense. One, it's not that helpful. And two, again, I'm looking at this spot here. I'm looking to back a tail shot or back a ball, and if I don't have anybody to back it to, that's a problem. One thing you might want to be aware of is as a 4, when I teach that the first part of any shot should be to look over your shoulder and see what's coming down. Maybe you can avoid a foul, or really you should be looking, if you're gonna back a ball, that's a pass, and you wanna back a ball to one of your players as opposed to just hitting it. But if you look back over your shoulder and your 3 teammates are looking at you in the face, that's a problem, because by the time you back the ball and they turn around for it, it's already going to get backed. I like nothing better than when I look over my shoulder and I'm about to back a ball, to see the back of my own teammate's head, or the back of their pony, because I know they're headed in the right direction. That's about quick turning. But again, in this scenario here, I'm probably the majority of the defense. Pick up these players if you're one of the kind of, essentially what we've got here is a back and 3 forwards, right? And then we move on from there to as we progress, we go from I'm going to use myself as an example here because it's easy for me to say. I move from the 4 to the 3 position, and I've got my players here, and now I ask one of my players to start playing back, and I rotate who that is, so that we all learn. But again, we need this player to now stay back here and not pass. I mean, and there's going to be situations where the 4 passes the 3, but it should be the exception and not the rule.
Okay, now here's the other question. Suppose I'm defending against a team playing in a 3-man zone or a 4-man zone.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm marking the second man in line, or the first man in line, and that first man drops back to the back of the line. What am I doing?
That's a good question. I mean, that's part of why it's effective, is because it can be a little confusing for the other team that way. So one, you have to recognize that's what's happening, and maybe and that's maybe not an easy read. Maybe you're not reading that they're employing this strategy. But as a team, you have to decide. Again, are we playing zone polo where we have an area of responsibility, or are we playing man on man? If it's man on man, when this player rolls back, and rolls back here, if you're defending, you roll back with him. That's probably a lesser strategy than if you're playing against a team that's employing say a 4-man zone, you're probably rotating zone. You're probably better off playing a straight up zone position.
Yep.
Play 4. It'll be less confusing, because if say this 3 drops back, now he's really out of position. So it's probably better to switch and just go to a straight zone. The problem is in 75% of low goal, even what I would consider strong tournament teams in the desert, so often we're not employing any strategy at all. you know, that's what I would say you should attempt to change. I mean, you got to have some kind of philosophy and some kind of strategy going out onto the field. Otherwise, we're just going out there, and you know, it's a glorified stick and ball at that point.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whenever you go out on the polo field, you're practicing. And you're either practicing something good or you're practicing something bad, and you're reinforcing the same habits. So I like to go out there with a purpose when you can.
Okay, got a question from Hayward. He says,
Okay.
handicap-wise, what do you think makes the best four-goal lineup? A 3, a 2, a 0, and a -1, or 2 2s and 2 zeros?
It really could be either. Again, it goes back to you know, it's hard to answer that question by handicap. But I definitely like balance on a team. So by that logic, you know, it'd be 2 2s and 2 zeros. But it again, you know, it depends on the level of each. You know, we all know that there's a range of in between minus and 0, and those are a pretty big range. If it's you know, 2 really solid zeros and 2 really solid 2s, then I'd almost always go with that. But we don't always have a choice, right? I mean, you know, sometimes you know, we got a -1 that's willing to bet pro and a 0 that's not. But if that's not the problem, that's a tough question in, say, 4-goal. You know, sometimes the 3 can bring just that much more knowledge and experience. If you have a 2 that can captain, and that's something you definitely need in low goal, is someone directing traffic. So again, when you're picking that team, you're looking for someone that can captain the team, and usually when you got two goalers, you may not find a captain in there. That might be the critical difference. Either one can work. I tell you what I wouldn't do personally, almost under any circumstances, is, and it's, you know, now legal, is you know, say a 4 and 3 zeros. I just think that's too easy when you focus all your kind of power in one player. It's too easy for 1 or even 2 players to take that player out, and the other players can kind of work around them.
Which is
But
a nice segue into our next question, Eric, actually.
Okay.
Francisco says, can you present one of the simple, can you present a simple play for 4 amateurs, not a rotation, playing against a pro and 3 amateurs?
Pro and 3 amateurs. Then in that situation, let's call that.
So I'm assuming he's on the 4 amateur team, and he wants a good way to beat a pro and 3 amateurs.
Right. So in that situation, that's an interesting question, and that actually happens a fair bit. Let's say you got the pro here. You have to commit at least 1 player to that pro. Okay. So that player is going straight up man on man, even though he's an amateur. Excuse me. The goal of this player is not to beat this, you know, let's call this, you know, the pro a 2-goal pro, and this is 0. The goal of the 0 is not to beat the pro. The goal is to make him commit, and commit in directions maybe he doesn't, you know, he or she doesn't want to go to. And it's not that the 2-goaler isn't going to be able to get around a 0-goaler. It's that it costs some time, and you know, time is the huge thing here. If I'm getting marked like this, it's not that I can't get around this player. It's that I have to think about how I'm going to get around this player. So now I'm setting up plays based on this player. I like to divide I like to divide the field into thirds. Okay, and these are lanes, they're alleyways, right? And if you have a player here let's call this the pro in your situation, okay? What you're trying to do is to create a situation whereby you're taking one or more of these alleyways away. So just the fact of you being right here means that it's tough for this player to go into this, the pro, say, to go into this area, and maybe even tougher to go here. So now you're forcing them to go, basically, let's call it to the right here, okay? Now, when they do that, if the rest of your team's paying attention and is aware at that level, they should start setting up. They know where this guy's going to go, right? I mean, you're forcing him to that direction, and you're making it tough for him to pass to players that are in this third of the field or this third of the field, and that's all you're trying to do. You're not trying to, if you're going to outstick, if a 2-goal player gets outsticked by, or the 0-goal player outsticks the 2-goal player, that's going to happen 1 in 10 times, 2 in 10 times. But if you can force them to any one of these thirds, the rest of your team should be setting up the defense down the line, so that, if there's an open player down here, well, you kind of know if this player is taking away the other avenues, that he's pretty much got to go here unless he's going to shoot through your horse. It's possible, but he risks hitting the horse and having it bounce off and be a random play. So to answer your question, you got to send at least one player. Sometimes you might even send 2. You might even say, hey, look, we're going to send 2 players to this guy. We're going to make sure that we're going to make life as tough as possible. It depends on how strong your other 2 players would be. But I think what's valuable about having a pro on a team, or what should be valuable, is not that they're going to win the game for you, but that they're creating plays that then people that they either continue or finish. But if this guy never creates a play, then the 3 amateurs playing with him are probably not going to be able to have a play to finish. So you got to cut the head off the snake. That's number 1. 2, when I talk about awareness with players, I ask my new players to, instead of just backing the ball to hit it, or backing it to back it, either back it to a player, or even more relevant, know where the opposing pro is. Let's say the opposing pro is here. No, you got to know before you get to that back shot. Okay, the opposing pro's over to my, what would be an away shot. So I'm going to back it, and even if this guy still gets there first, you've made him run all the way across the field to go get it. He might still be the first one there, but you've cost him time, and it allows your team to set up its defense or set up its offense. But I would say if you're looking for, that probably didn't qualify as a simple play, but I would, if you want me to simplify it, what I would say is spend at least one player who leaves their mallet at home and marks ideally you'd be marking the opposing pro's stick side, his offside, and you can quantify your success by the number of shots that player takes an offside forehand shot. I haven't met anybody that's as good on the near side as they are on the offside. I haven't met too many guys that can hit it, much over, 60, 70 yards on the near side, and those are only a couple. I only know a couple of those guys. So if you force a player that's 2 goals better than you to taking near sides for 7 minutes, I call that a huge win. I call that you're making a 2-goal play at that point. And more we're employing video and all that kind of thing. If you can get your games videoed, a great exercise is, if you're going to do something like mark the opposing pro, have that video camera have that video camera follow you, and carry a stopwatch with you, and see how much of 7.5 minutes you were actually on that person's right side. It'll shock you how if you're exceeding 2 minutes, you're doing a fantastic job, and that goes for that goes for 2-goal players on 2-goal players too. But I mean, I've done this exercise, and then you think you're marking somebody hard, and then you realize that you were really with them for, I mean, 3 would be outstanding. You're with them for 2.5 minutes out of 7.5 minutes, and you think, man, was I really marking that player or not? That's a great exercise.
That's a great one, Eric. All right, Jack has a question. He says, as a new player, what skills do you typically find lacking in low-goal players? That is to say, when practicing as a team or during stick and ball, what should we work on to be better prepared for your coaching?
The short answer to that is riding. Most of us think. Well, let me just say I can teach a monkey to hit the ball, but riding and teaching the line are a whole nother thing. And riding in particular, because if you can't hit the ball, or you can't get to the ball, you can't hit it. And most people neglect that the most. We don't learn to ride, and therefore we get frustrated when we can't get to the ball and hit it. And it's not just that you that you arrive at the ball. Maybe you are getting to the ball, but you're not arriving under control, and your horse is throwing its head around, and you're jumping up and down. You want to be as quiet on that horse as possible. Ride. That's if you're going to spend time preparing, that's the number one thing I would say. If you're talking about hitting, again, just really smooth. When I stick on ball, I'm trying to slow my swing down as much as possible and be as smooth as possible, in both sides. Most of us tend to swing a little too hard, and so when you go out there, I really work on slowing it down. The other thing that people don't practice that I think they should is when we go out for a stick and ball, a lot of times that's a 20 or 25 minute stick and ball, because we're hand cantering around, and we go out and we take a hand canter around the field, taking offside forehanders. Well, that's the shot we're the best at. When I stick and ball for 3, maybe 4 minutes, and I'm stick and balling at tournament speed, because if you practice at a hand canter, then that's the speed that your timing is going to be for a hand canter. And so I don't, if you want to go out and, again, I mean, there's different things. If you want to go out and run around and put a smile on your face after a hard day of work, then go take a 25-minute stick and ball and hit the ball around. There's nothing wrong with it. If you're going to go and actually practice something, then I would go for 3 or 4 minutes hard and then go put my horse away, because if you practice at a trot, then you're going to hit really well at a trot. But when you get up to tournament speed and everyone else is running around at full speed, your timing's going to be off. I had a high goal player tell me one time, and of course he grew up in a place where there were 1,000 horses, so he could do stuff like this, and we're not always able to do this. But I thought it was a great idea at the time. His dad told him when he went out there, he said, okay, they had 10 horses to stick and ball, and his dad would say, on this horse you only take near side back shots. On this horse you only take near side forehanders. On this one you take neck shots. On this one you take tail shots. You get the idea. Now maybe you can't do that all in one day, but it's a great exercise to go out there and say, hey, I'm only going to hit on the near side. A lot of people neglect the near side, and that's if you can't hit on the near side, then that's 50% of the shots that you can't hit. So when I go stick and ball, and try and make the shots that are difficult for you, and practice into the shots that are difficult for you.
Great. Okay. Chris wants to know, what signs should tell a low goal player that they should retire or sell a horse in their string? Not that the low goal player should retire, but that they should retire or sell a horse in their string.
Sorry, say that again.
Yeah. So what signs should tell a player that they should retire a horse or sell it?
You mean it's like it's too old? or that it's not matching for them. Do you
Sure,
know
I
the
think
answer?
I think the way the question is phrased, it's probably a little of both.
Okay.
Retires would seem to indicate that the horse is a bit old, and
Yeah.
sell means
I
maybe.
mean, if age, I mean, I think if you're asking yourself the question, it's probably time to retire him.
But we've all seen people out there flogging a horse that is clearly slowed down and is an older horse, and they're still playing it, as
yeah,
hard as they can for 7 minutes, and they don't, you know. But yeah. So I
yeah,
guess
but I
the
mean, if
question
you are
is, how should
personally, if
they
you're,
know?
well, I think if you find that the horse is, having a problem at the end of a chukker, maybe they're tripping, you have to take their legs into account. I don't think it's any one thing, um, but I think if you're asking yourself the question, then that's probably not probably in and of itself. It's probably time to move the horse on, or maybe it's time to move it on to a school or a lower level player. As far as selling horses, if you're not enjoying a horse, it costs the same to feed your best horse as it does your worst. So provided that you can find a horse that you can replace it with, which we all know the difficulty of. Provided that you can find a horse to replace it with. If you have a horse you don't enjoy, in particular if you're an amateur, there's no reason to own that horse as far as I'm concerned. Polo's supposed to be fun, and when we're getting run off with or we're not enjoying the horse, it's very difficult to get better, to learn, or just have fun. And polo needs to be, if you're playing polo, it should be all of those things.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, that's what's going on.
All right. Question: any tips for suggesting a rise in the level of practice play when the level dictated by your pro is knock in and run down the field?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to ask for it. Then, not all pros are able to make that, that leap. And I think pro doesn't necessarily mean coach, or doesn't necessarily mean instructor. So that's one thing when you're picking pros. That's something that I think we have a problem with in this country, is finding people, particularly at the local level. I mean, we need more coaches. We need more instructors that again are not playing for their own personal betterment or enjoyment necessarily. I mean in one goal polo, if you're a 2-goal player and you can't run through some zeros and a minus, then you probably shouldn't be 2. But what you're really looking for is somebody that will start setting up plays, is a creator of plays, can help you make adjustments when you've made an error, coach you through that. Again, that's not easy to find, but I would definitely start the instruction, start the conversation. If you're having trouble with that, start the conversation and ask again and ask again, and if you're not getting what you need, then you need to do something different. But I think having people that having a professional, and I'd like to see a little more. When we hire pros, a lot of times we're forgetting that stands for professional, and you can't hire a guy that is not a coach, and ask him to go win a tournament for you. Well, I guess my point is that you need to make sure you know what you're asking for, especially when you hire somebody. And for me, I would rather have someone that is a coaching professional, is a teaching professional, more than more a hired gun kind of thing. I think you should be getting something from your pro every time you go out there. If you can get coaching during the week, that's something that you should try and get if it's logistically possible.
Mhm.
That answers the question.
We're getting close to the end here, Eric, and we've got a lot more questions. So let's just let's try to buzz through a couple of these.
Okay. Okay.
Diego says basic tactics on 2 to 4 goal logo polo: defend on the mallet side or between your man and the goal.
For me, I mean, again, this is a discussion that you have with your team before the game. But in 90% of the cases, if you draw a line from the middle of the goal to midfield.
Anne has a suggestion. She says Control E or Alt E might erase the green board faster. I don't know if that works or not, but you might try it. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you, Anne. Okay. Okay, so if you draw this diamond from middle of the goal to the middle of the field, okay, for me, the team that controls the inside of this diamond probably wins the polo game. The more that you can push your opponents into corners, and these corners are dead corners, so the more you can push your opponents into these corners, and you yourself as a team can move up and down the middle of the field, the odds are, when you move up and down the field, the odds are you're going to have a pretty easy shot at goal. And the more opportunity you can put, when you get someone into this corner, they've got a problem, because getting out of this corner isn't easy. It isn't easy for high goal players. So when you get a low goal player that maybe doesn't have a great neck shot or doesn't can't dribble their way out of here, I'll ride down the field with a player, and I'll let them get into this corner because I know they're going to get stuck there, and then I pick it up and turn the play around. So the shorter answer to your question is, for me, I would control the middle of the field, which means that mallet side isn't as relevant as controlling the inside. So even if that puts you on the near side of the ball, for my number one obligation is to make sure that the opposing player I'm playing against doesn't hit the ball, not necessarily that I do.
Another question from Jim. What's a good drill for 2 players to use during a stick and ball session?
Real simple one is to move up and down the field. What was that? Control what? Control
E.
Kind of. I didn't get the whole thing.
Or Alt E would be the other possibility. I'm not a Windows person, so.
Okay, didn't get it.
All right.
I need to erase something. A real good drill is just go up and down the field. I'm sorry, guys. Is taking the ball. One player comes up and is coming here. One player is here, and they're going up parallel to each other. This player will neck a ball. This player come over and take a cut shot back to this player. This player's advanced. He takes a neck shot all the way down the field, and then when you get down to this end, you switch, and whoever was taking neck shots on this side takes neck shot. They switch positions or the shot you're hitting. You can do the same thing with tail shots, or back shots. I like tail shots, but one player hits it up, the other player backs it. You can back it again, or even better, where it starts getting more about awareness is this player is going to, as this player is going to the ball, player B will ask for either an away shot or a tail shot, and you deliver, and make sure that you don't neglect, especially on the back shots, make sure that you don't neglect your near side back shots. We go to every second shot and make it a near side no matter what. You can do this with any shot. I mean, you can go up and down the field and hit near side neck shots and near side cut shots down the field to each other. Another great drill is real simple one. I love cones. I'm a cone guy, so if you want to get a little competition in there, you'll set a set of cones here and a set of cones here, and see just a simple up and back. So much of this game is about getting turned around. It's rarely about speed, and in this drill, speed kills, because what you see whenever somebody does this the first time is they go out here at Mach 5 and then they go past the cone about 30 feet and then come back, right? It's really about 3/4. The better strategy is to come at 3/4 pace, make a good, nice, easy turn, and come back. But two players could go against each other, or if you're on your own, a good one to do, or if you can get somebody to time you, you can play against yourself. Put two cones up here and see if you can beat your own time. If you do it in 13 seconds, the first time, in up and back. See if you can do it in 12 and a half the next time, and have somebody time for you.
Great drill. Okay. And I think I've got one more question that I missed, sorry, at the beginning. So I want to make sure and get this from Jim. Can you describe some... Oh, wait, sorry, wrong play. Sorry, I got that one. Hang on. One more. Saw one that I missed. Hang on. Ask that one. Well, I thought I missed one. Oh, here we go. Sorry, from Arthur. In low goal, is the best overall strategy man line ball or zone or, quote, polo vision? Which I think you sort of addressed, but maybe you could just take it on one more time.
Well, I don't see them as mutually exclusive. I mean, man line ball is just a basic tenet. We're gonna take the man, control the line, and the ball is the last thing that we look at. Cork always says in a perfect polo game, the ball wouldn't move, right? Because everybody'd have their man, and they just take it away, and the ball would just sit in the middle of the field. But mismatches and mistakes are what makes the ball move, really. But but within, I think you'd use man line ball within using a zone. In other words, just because you're a zone doesn't mean that you don't take the man, then the line, then the ball. That's more of a play situation. In other words, if you're a 4 back here, and you have the one coming to you, the ball's been, say, hit here, and you have the one coming. Well, here, let me do it this way so we have a little more room. The 4's here, the one hits the ball, and the one's here, the ball comes here. The 4 should move. As the 1 comes up, the 4 is going to move this guy over. So he's going to take the man, take the man. Then he's got control of the line, and then he gets the ball last. So that's maybe he's in a zone position, but he's still using man line ball. I'm not sure what polo vision is. I think, is that Hugo name?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I haven't read that one. But I think that you use these you're using that within the question of am I on the man? And if you're on man, then you've got the man the whole time, and the whole point of what you're trying to do is, if the ball's here, if you're on defense, your whole point is to put yourself between wherever the ball is, wherever it be. You're trying to put your body and your horse's body between the ball and your opponent, and so when you do that, no matter what, you have control of the man. Depending on where the line's coming from, you have control of the line and then the ball.
Great. All right. We're through our questions. If you don't mind, Eric, if you'd advance the slide one. We're going to do this twice here real quick. Just want to let everybody know how to get a hold of Erik. He can be found at Erik@rightwaypolo.com. If you need me, I'm at Kim@Poloskilz.com, and Amber is Owen@USPolo.org. If you'll hit the slide one more time, Erik, I just want to let everybody know what our July webinar is going to be. coming up next, and this is a nice segue, Thursday, July 18th, at same time, same station, we have Coach Charlie Muldoon, who's a Team USPA member and was the coach of the 2011 USFIP team in Argentina. Charlie's going to be talking about various set play strategies. So he'll be talking specifically about penalties, fours, fives, and knock-ins, and with some different strategies drawn out for players at the various different levels and handicaps for each one of those, which is a question that we have actually gotten quite a lot of, not from everything from how do I line up for those set plays to what is my role to what is some of the more advanced strategies. So we've asked Charlie to go through that with us, and he has agreed to do that. So each of you will receive an email with the link to register for that. We hope you will join us. I want to say thank you to Erik for taking time out to do this for us. We really, really appreciate it. There's some nice comments left for you here. Last thing to tell you is the archive will be available in a couple of days. Probably really, honestly, did I say 18th? Sorry about that. Thank you, Alice. It's actually the 19th. My bad. July 19th is the Thursday in July. Sorry about that. I will put the archive up here very shortly. On your way out, there's a little exit survey. It will literally take you 2 minutes. Just tell us what you thought of this webinar. Was it helpful? Who else would you like to hear from, and what topics would you like to have covered? We're going to do a total of 6 of these, thanks to the USPA for their underwriting. So let us know what you would find helpful, and we will try to get someone to present that for you. All right, we went about 10 minutes over, but hopefully you found that worthwhile. Thanks, everybody. Have a
Thank
great
you.
evening. Thank you, Erik, and we'll see you all on the polo field.
Thanks, Kim.